We're on to our fourth match now. We're currently 3-0. We've beaten an interesting bug deck. We've beaten Burn, and we've beaten what appeared to be Affinity. We're going to keep another pretty decent hand. I think we're pushed into fetching a basic island here. Purely because we don't have a second land and we're going to need mana soon. So we should have kept the Thoughtseize. And now we just have to hope not to get mana screwed. Oh, sorry, wastelanded. And that was an especially risky play now that we know our opponent's on Delver. I guess they did go to 5 cards, so they're going to be less inclined to wasteland us in general. Okay, I think we want both of... We almost want both of those cards. The reason for keeping both of those cards is something like Cabal Ritual, Dark Petition. So if we can get Threshold, we cast Cabal Ritual, Dark Petition, and that probably just lets us win because it's a must counter. Actually, I guess this probably wins us the game as well. Our opponent needs to have something like double counter spell. So he needs to force the Dark Ritual here. Or daze it. He needs some way of dealing with the Dark Ritual. Okay, so he is on blue-red Delver. So it's interesting that blue-red Delver is playing Wasteland now. Okay, so Swamp was a good draw. Alright, so we'll cast Rain of Filth. We'll cast out both our LEDs now. I think we're now at a point where it's going to be really hard for our opponent to choke us on mana. Choking us on mana with a soft counter is likely their only piece of interaction left, given they've only got a single card remaining in hand. Because right now we're going to go to 9 mana. And once we successfully do that, we're Daze proof and we're Spell Pierce proof, I'm pretty sure. So we definitely made some risky plays here. It worked out for us. I think at least in part because our opponent's on a blue-red Delver deck rather than what I'd consider to be one of the better Delver decks. My main rationale just being that I think the blue-red Delver deck tends to be quite soft against a lot of combo decks. It just lacks the necessary interaction to be great. We're going to stick with our normal Delver plan, just boarding in and empty the Warrens and an extra piece of discard. There's always an argument to be made for bringing in something like 2 pieces of removal, just especially against the blue-red decks. They can sometimes play an Eidolon, but I think we'd rather just try to kill them. I think we should keep this hand. It's pretty strong. The Past in Flames Tendrils from hand interaction is pretty disgusting. Turn 1, we're just going to play Misty Rainforest and pass. Turn 2, we'll play out our Volk, and we'll brainstorm off that. And we can risk a Wasteland here. So prior to the probe ban, we'd often see the Swift Spear played out with a Gitaxian probe as well to trigger prowess. So I think we're seeing the blue-red Delver deck get a little bit stung by that as well. I don't know long term how it's going to be. All right, so I think we can pitch back a land and a Thoughtseize. I'm going to turn the Infernal Tutor into another ritual at some point, I think. So we can actually afford to, we're in an enviable place here of being able to actually deal with the tutor getting countered and surgicaled, just because of the way our hand is structured out. Alright, so I've clearly decided to draw the Thoughtseize here, which isn't unreasonable. Given how little they've been doing, they probably have a reasonable amount of interaction. I think maybe we should have paid for the Spell Pierce there. And we're definitely going to pay for this Daze. So we're slowly grinding our opponent out of cards. So they're down to 4 unknown cards in hand. We can only assume that Force plus blue card are some of what they have. Alright, so they're going to cast a Surgical Extraction, taking our tutor. So as we were saying before, that's something that we've already decided that we're comfortable with. And it also means that our opponent has even less interaction in hand than we thought they did. It does give them a way to work out what's happening with our hand, which is slightly awkward. It's also helping take us off Threshold, which might actually be relevant. So they're bolting us again, so we're going to go down to 7. And our opponent with 2 cards now in hand. So I think we can beat 2 cards in hand. So, and we're going to ponder here mostly so that we can try to find, try to get threshold as quickly as possible, which is what the land's going to let us do. So Cabal Ritual number 1 is not going to be thresholded. Cabal Ritual number 2 will be because of both Cabal Ritual and Thoughtseize. Okay, so opponent's casting Surgical, so they managed to draw a second Surgical, and they're casting it on Cabal Ritual. So we need to fire the Ritual off now, so we have as much mana as possible. And unless they've got something exciting, we get to take their last card, and they don't. So I think we're priced into casting Tendrils here. This is something that could be a problem for us, but as it stands right now, we have, they need something like another Surgical, which is unlikely from here. So they've already found 2 of what we can only assume are 2 to 3. The other thing that can bite us is something like a Relic of Progenitus. On the flip side, we now have them down to 4. And where there's something like a ritual of killing them. So I think possibly we could have taken the Duress and the Preordain next turn to go something like Duress for Force of Will, Preordain, try to find the ritual and win. Would that work? No. So I think we need 2 rituals. Or an LED plus a tutor. So we'll happily play out Empty the Warrens here. And we're going to pay for one of these Flusterstorms. So that's going to give us 2 goblins on the board, which will buy us a little bit of time and mean that if our opponent does anything silly, if our opponent does anything silly, we'll just win. This is a somewhat interesting game in that we're getting to see the really grindy nature of what Storm's able to do. Where we can just keep essentially jamming our spells into what our opponent does, or into our opponent's interaction until they run out of gas. So Dark Ritual here is actually our closer, and we have exactly enough mana for Dark Ritual into Past in Flames into Tendrils of Agony. And we know our opponent's hand is nothing but Force of Will here. So we'll be able to play out Force Storm, which will be more than enough to clinch match for.